All right, welcome back to another episode of Nostalgia Street, where we share the stories that shape us. And hopefully, for the final time, I will be without my co-host and business partner, Vince. Vince has a raging case of rabies. He was bit by 3 animals on the way to work today. But I think the shots he's taken to his stomach are going to help turn him around. And I'm looking this way to see if he's walking to the door. He's not there yet. But we wish Vince a quick recovery. In the meantime, our guest today is Mike. We're going to talk about Mike all over the place later on here. But Mike, if you could send a telegram to anybody in the history of the world, who would it be and what would you say?
We're going to go deep right away here, aren't we? Yeah. In the history of the world. There's a guy named Ernest Shackleton. It's a story about how he and his crew survived this Antarctic wreck in the early 1900s. And it's a pretty remarkable story about leadership and how everybody survived in that. What would I say or what would I ask? I think just what that experience was like. I think because it's so unique and not a lot of people know that story. A few years ago, the exhibit over here at the pavilion had a story on that, and there's a movie around it too. So
there's a movie?
Yeah, there is. And so just a super.
You know what it's called?
Honestly, I don't remember
Ernest Shackleton.
What it was called. Down. Ernest Shackleton. So
what year was was this?
It was right around the place of World War I want to say.
Okay.
Is when it took place. It's kind of why it didn't get much coverage, because it was wartime. So there was other headlines that were more important.
But through his leadership, everybody survived.
Everybody survived. Yeah, essentially the ship was blocked in ice, and it crumbled it, and then they basically survived on these icebergs for. There was they were on ice for 18 months. It's just ridiculous. In 1900 something, and it's not like North Face, gear and stuff like today. So, just kind of a fascinating story of survival and. Are you leadership.
Familiar with Admiral Stockdale and McCain? His first name's missing me, but they were POWs in the. I think it was in the Vietnam War, Korean War. And it's this similar thing, through their leadership, they endured a ton of torture. Yeah. But they were able to, those two in particular, because they're the higher ranking officers, they were able to be a beacon of hope for the other POWs, and they got out alive. I mean, I think they had probably lifelong trauma, but
was that the Hanoi Hilton? Was that is that the story?
That could be.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
That's a bad deal. But anyway, Ernest Shackleton. The name sounds familiar. I got to look him up.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Nostalgia Street invites you on a retro ride that's more than just a trip down memory lane.
Uncover life lessons and personal growth stories that stem from our collective past.
So you can live a richer, more connected life today.
Whether you're a 90s kid, an 80s teen, or simply young at heart, you'll find something to relate to in each episode.
Now, here are your hosts, Vince and Jeff.
Well, our guest today is Mike Limmer. Mike is a relationship marketing coach, and it's unique that we threw that question at Mike about telegrams. We'll tell you more about that in the future as we go through this. They'll come back. So, Mike, where did you grow up?
I'm a farm kid. I'm a South Dakota boy.
A lot of farm kids today.
Yeah, I grew up. I grew up and graduated from Chester High School. Okay, so just a little,
not too far from here.
Not far from here. So I grew up on the farm. It was a little closer to Madison, technically, but this way the boundary lines were put together, I went to Chester School District.
And so, do you have any brothers or sisters?
So I have younger. I was like an only child for 12 years, and then my sister came along, and my brother came along. So 12 years and 16
Mom
years
and
apart.
Dad reunited the spark, I guess, right?
Something like that. Yeah. So
did you buy him something for Christmas that fueled it, or what?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. But yeah, so. Yeah, I was kind of unique in that when I graduated high school, my sister just started kindergarten that year, so they started their whole cycle over of they got one out, and then they started the whole thing over again with Sarah and then my brother Adam. So
what kind of farm was it?
You know, when I was really young, we actually had some hogs for a while, but mostly it was just crops that my dad had. And my dad was like a work monster. He was, he had his own construction company. He was a carpenter, but then he also farmed at the same time.
Jeez.
And I don't know how he did all that, you know, looking at it now, like as a grown person, like thinking about how busy a full-time job is, and then you farm on the side. And so, but yeah, I've really, and chickens, some chickens. So it was, I don't know, it was kind of like a storybook, you know, growing up, honestly. I loved having hogs for a while, pigs for a while. We didn't have them long, but great memories with my dad doing that.
I think I just figured out why there's that 12-year span between you and your brother and sister.
That's it.
You were aging out from the farm. They knew that you were going to be going off to college or whatever.
It could be.
And they needed some new labor to come into the marketplace.
It could be. That's quite possible.
You need to ask your dad that the next time. Hey, I'm just wondering. This came up recently.
I think my mom had a little bit more to do with that. Like, these things stink. Literally, I think that was probably some of it.
So, were many chores then for the farm then passed on to you growing up? Do you have a lot of chores?
Not a ton. Like I said, it was like when I was much younger, probably from like, I don't know, like age 6, 7 till maybe 10. And then the livestock stuff was gone. Still, it's chickens. That's not very much work.
Yeah.
And it was just doing, you know, it was the old school stuff. Like when you used to raise crops, you know, you used to weed the beans, walk the beans.
Yeah.
You know, so you go out and do stuff like that. And so it's just, you know, it's so different from then. But drove the tractor and did the cultivating and, you know, some of the, you know, not anything terribly difficult, but enough to where you had an appreciation for the land and crops and all that goes with that. And it's part of, you know, where we live here. So.
And you slept well at night.
Yeah, most definitely.
Passed out.
Yeah.
So how big of a school did you have?
Chester was, I graduated with a whopping 19. There were 19 of us, class of 1990, so let everybody run the math on that one.
So it was a target-rich environment for the dating pool as well, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so it was a small school, but it was wonderful. It was, you know, it's just such a great community. It still is a wonderful community. I just have so many great memories. I felt so, I don't know, I just felt like I was part of a community. I mean, I really felt like it was a place that everybody knew everybody, and, you know, classic small town stuff. But
what is the population of Chester?
It's got to be under 300, I'm sure. Chester as a school district is made up of 3 townships. It's Chester, Franklin, and Wentworth, which Wentworth's actually the town I lived in. So in the late 60s, I believe the Chester school burned down, I think. It was the year my dad graduated, I think was the year. And so then they brought all the towns together and they made it the Chester area school. Gotcha. So 3 villages merged into one.
Area. That always helps solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, right.
It's an area problem.
Yeah.
So it's funny because a couple of people we talked about in a couple of recent podcasts also farm kids, but there's no country groups listed in the questionnaire that we gave Mike. He identified mostly heavy metal groups and not so much on the countryside. So where did your love of heavy metal come from at a young age?
Geez, rebellious teenage years. That's very stereotypical. You know, it was just so all over the place. You know, and in the country, you know, I had 3 channels. It wasn't like I had MTV or any of that stuff. Yep. I think, like I remember when Friday Night Videos came on. They're dating myself there, right? Like, yeah, so that came out, and like that was a big deal because you could see him. But I don't know where the heavy metal thing really came from.
It was a girl, probably, right?
Probably. I mean,
gotta impress whoever it was.
It's quite possible, you know. It's a Motley Crue nut, you know, for a lot of those teenage years.
So this would have been 80s, for sure. So Motley Crue, when they first came out, they were pretty out there. They like threw their pentagrams and satanic overtures all over the place. They scared the crap out of a lot of parents, I'm sure.
I'm sure they did. Looking at it now, if that were my kids, I would have freaked out.
I saw a what do you call it? A biography about them. And I forget who the actors were. I would say the perception of a lot of parents or kids too is, oh, they're Satan worshipers. Look at, shout at the devil, blah, blah, blah. I got this cord under my leg that I'm trying to hide. But it would appear, especially through the biopic, is a lot of bands in the 80s had to stick out from each other. And the best way to do that was to be the most outlandish and to cause as much controversy as possible. And I remember, so I was a big U2 fan back in the 80s, and I remember reading an article in the Rolling Stone, I believe it was, where Bono, the lead singer, said that his record company would more than likely pay them any amount of money if they drove a Cadillac into somebody's pool, because it would make them rise in the headlines.
Sure.
So I know a lot of these groups that you listed probably fit into that category, where the more outlandish they are, the more money you make, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen me. I've mentioned this before, but I've shaken the hand of John Bon Jovi.
Have you?
My roommate, when I lived in Chicago, spoke to him on the phone because he was trying to buy a playground equipment set for his family in New Jersey.
Sure.
I shared the story with a coworker, and he says, I can one-up you. My wife dated him in high school. And I'm like, you're full of it. And he goes, fine, I will bring you the records tomorrow. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, every album that Bon Jovi releases, she gets a signed copy of that album because they had a really great friendship.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're full of it. He brings it in, and then he also has like something else that he had signed so that they were authentic. And I mean, sure enough, he was right.
Crazy.
I'm like, what? It's crazy. So I don't know why John Bon Jovi keeps propping up in my history. But so who else did you like besides the heavy metal guys back then?
80s it's a unique music period, to say the least.
Different.
It's such a it was all over the place with it. Like there's heavy metal power ballads, that was such a big thing at the time. The pop stuff, to me, I thought was kind of wacky sort of stuff. Didn't get into that. But no, definitely was not a country, living in the country, like I wasn't a country music fan at that point or anything. I think Guns N' Roses just started to be another one of those crazy groups that emerged at that time. And, it was just so radically different. I don't know. I guess it's part of the attraction to it.
What did you wear in school?
The old stonewashed jeans and the jacket, the stonewashed jacket, or like the Levi jacket, I think was a popular thing. And, and then jeans were, the acid things, or the torn jeans, or I think those came back not long ago, right? So
it always comes
we
back.
were cool again, and had the pegged pants, you roll them up or whatever.
Yep, we talked about that before too.
Did that thing. So yeah, that was most of it. And like I remember like I wanted this whatever the cool jean jacket was. I didn't really have any money. We didn't really we were pretty humble. Yeah. And I don't think I ended up with a very nice name brand one, but I think I covered it up with like pins or whatever. You put those little buttons on them. Yeah. So try to make it compensate for it.
I want to know who or how that movement of rolling up the jeans got started. And if that person could have made money off of that idea. But it's amazing how many people that we talk with. And I mean, I grew up in Missouri, so it wasn't like it was like a local thing. It was like Midwest wide, at least, if not larger, where everybody did that little thing. Or I didn't do it because I didn't think it was cool enough. But a lot of kids had either eyes out or polo, so they'd pop the collar up.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was a little too pretentious for me. But,
super preppy stuff, right?
The preppy stuff. Exactly. I haven't heard that word forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
but I had pink Oxford. That was considered as preppy as I got.
Yeah,
or you had the loafers where you put the penny loafers. You actually put a penny in there.
Yeah,
had to have that.
Yeah, I could afford the penny, but not the loafers.
Well, the best thing about those loafers is you could do the moonwalk, Michael Jackson moonwalk with those, because the way that the sole was.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah,
Did you do that?
Less friction. Well, I tried, but it was not pretty. Nobody wanted to see that.
So what were some of the main activities that you would do in Chester growing up?
It's like early year, like because we lived 9 miles. 10 miles from Chester itself.
Okay.
Living in the country. And so there was a couple of neighbor kids that, you'd hang out and do your thing. And that was, like when we were little kids, it was just, tackle football kind of stuff in the yard or whatever. So like I really didn't spend a lot of actual time in Chester younger, as you got older though, like in through high school years, people will probably kind of think this is kind of crazy, but like I kind of grew up in a bar in a way, because that was what there was. There was Hef's Bar, and Hef's Bar was where it's where you got your pizza and your hamburger and your pop, and we'd play foosball and we'd play pool and we'd play pitch, card pitch, and that was just it's kind of where we just all hung out. Yeah. And so like after games on Fridays for basketball or football or whatever, that was again kind of where everybody came, and it was it just gave a really big sense of community there, hanging out. And so we didn't do anything, flashy or, crazy. Just hanging out and doing, kind of everyday kind of stuff.
Just light beer. That's all. No hard stuff.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the regulars, and they're drinking the goosenecks and, all that kind of stuff. And I so vividly remember, so many, great experiences there, just conversations with people in that community. It was fun. Yeah. Good place to be in a bar.
In a bar, of course. So were there any other activities that you did that you either regret or would like to tell us about that either involved the police, blood, or parental fear?
That's a different podcast. So when I was, what was I, sophomore or junior, I flipped my dad's truck.
Oh my gosh.
We were coming home, it was after a basketball game, and it was one of those nights where it was like 31-ish, 32, and that I was coming up over a hill, and it had frosted over, and it was one of those older trucks where it didn't have the four-wheel drive, and so it skirted, and I went in and I flipped it. Wow. And it's pretty fortunate.
So you didn't roll it, you flipped it. Mm-hmm. End over end?
Yeah, like it went in. Oh, it went in like this, and then it just stopped and then just flipped.
Wow.
Over. Yeah.
I think you're the first person I've ever talked to. Everyone says they rolled it, but never flipped it.
Looking at it now, not God had a different plan, because yeah.
Any broken bones?
Nothing.
Just scared the crap out of you?
Yeah.
Did you go, Dad's going to be mad?
So it had happened near like a little restaurant thing called a Shipwreck Inn, and so I ran down the hill and, got on the phone and, called them, and back when you called people, on the phone. And, yeah. And I can't imagine what went through their mind. In fact, I was talking, I'm sure, was just a relief to them. But when I said, I just flipped the truck, it was sure their heart must have just stopped. And all
was
that.
It totaled?
They did repair it and got it back going again. But it was not pretty. They probably did more damage actually pulling it out than they did actually flipping it. Kind of a weird thing, but
pulled the bumper off.
Yeah, it was ugly, to say the least. So regret. Yeah, that's how do you regret? Essentially an accident. Probably could have done a few things differently, and there were certainly some moments in high school. It was small town. You tend to participate in a few gatherings that maybe kids that age shouldn't be participating in.
Gatherings, yeah.
So
kids are kids,
but it was part of what it was, particularly back then.
We'll be right back. So as high school is coming to a near completion, what were your thoughts? What did you want to do when you got out of high school?
Kind of wanted to extend what was happening in high school, a little bit.
Don't want to grow up.
Yeah, just keep having fun, sadly. Yeah, I went, I was very fortunate in that I had some great coaches and teachers I had, I was participated in high school sports, and I was more of a track kid, and I went down to USD and ran track for a little bit. And so I kind of had that as, sort of a falling back on it. That didn't last very long, but I did, I tried. And so, coming out of high school, I really wasn't sure. I mean, I had some really good people in my life that I think were trying to guide me, but I just had it in my mind that I was going to go to college. I didn't really know what. I had no clue what I was going to do there. I was just going to go there and figure it out. Yeah. And that's kind of a whole long story, but I did figure it out. But I didn't really have any, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to go get a marketing degree, or there was nothing like that whatsoever. It was just, I'm kind of going to go down to Vermilion, and I think that's where I'm going to start the journey.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
So what was it like then, going from a community, so how many people, well, you said you graduated from 19, right?
Yeah, about 300 people in Chester, probably.
So when you go from that to USD, where you got several thousand kids that are your age, what was that like?
Man, I was the little fish in the big sea, right? Because when you come from Chester, you're the big fish in the little sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in a small town where I wasn't all that in a bag of chips, but we were fortunate, to have some good years as teams and individuals. And so, when that happens in a small town, people kind of get excited about that. And then you go to Vermilion, and nobody knows who you are. So it was definitely an adjustment. I didn't probably do real well, honestly, when I started. I look at it now, I'm like, I'm kind of surprised I finished, honestly.
Same.
Yeah, but just met enough people, and I think some of that was just I met enough people. I just enjoyed being around people, and being around people who, had an idea or a sense of where they were going to go. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to go, but I want to go in that general direction. Yeah. So just being around those people was enough of an inspiration to kind of keep going. Moving forward, but that first year was just dreadful. I mean, I think I had I don't know, a 2.5 GPA or so. I don't know. It was it's embarrassing.
I've got that story beat on the GPA. It wasn't me. My debate partner in high school, he joined a fraternity. He had a 0.4 GPA. Let's say he maybe drank a little too much.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they kicked him out of the fraternity after that first semester. He took it way deep.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst I've ever heard.
Yeah. It happens.
It does, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what would that pathway look like then, as you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do? How many majors did you potentially get into before you figured out what you wanted to do?
Yeah, first year I was just undeclared, because I really didn't know. And then I thought, at that time, occupational therapy was starting to become kind of a thing. I'm like, I think, I could do this occupational therapy thing. That's helping people. That makes sense to me. And so I flirted around a little bit with that. And then I got a couple of in classes with people who were med students. I didn't take long to figure out I'm not that guy. They run in circles around me. And I found myself in a trig class in college, which makes no sense at all. If you knew Mike Limmer from,
even trig in general. Why?
Yeah. So that was kind of, and I try, I'm like, this is just part of what it is. You got to just endure, but it wasn't me. And so, in the spring of 1993, we had a family friend who worked as what's called a fire management officer out in Livingston, Montana, and he's friends with my dad. And I said, do you hire people? What do you, and he says, yeah, I do. Are you serious? And I said, yeah, I need a job in the summer. And he said, well, call me in May if you're serious. Yeah. So I called him in May, and he ended up hiring me for the next 3 summers to be a firefighter for the Forest Service out in Livingston. And it's kind of a fun side note. I get out there, I'm like, hey, I'd love to learn how to fly fish out here. I've seen that movie, A River Runs Through It. And he says, yeah, that was filmed here. I go, what? And so I spent the next 3 summers, my summer jobs was working for the Forest Service in the valley where they shot a lot of that movie. And I did learn how to fly fish.
Sweet.
And I figured out who Mike Limmer was during that time. There was me flopping around with no idea or direction what I was going to do. And then I just got out there and I really got clarity, and I really figured out this, I know what I want to do. And so I shifted from that whole pre-OT facade that I was that I had, and realized I want to be a teacher. I wanted to go into education. So my junior year of college, middle of my junior year, I changed my major to education, which extended my college career a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's the direction I went then, was an elementary education major.
So had you taught at all before that?
I hadn't really taught, but I think, again, I kind of a recurring theme. I mean, I started thinking back about some of those teachers and coaches that I had in Chester that were so influential in me as a person. And I'm like, I didn't realize it at the time because you're young, you don't know anything. Sure. But as you get a little bit older, and you really reflect, what happened was, you just start really reflecting on who are the people that really make a difference. And it was teachers, overwhelmingly, were the people that really made an impact. And I thought, there was, I remember distinctly, there was a teacher named Daryl Borkart, and kind of an unfortunate situation when I was a freshman. He had kind of taken me under his wing to just help me get through math. I just really wasn't a great math major student, which, explained the trigonometry thing, right? And I just remember how it made me feel, because I remember, he would go into study hall and help me when it was like his prep period as a teacher. So I ended up kind of just reflecting on that and realizing, that's how I want other people to feel. Yeah. Like if I can help other people like that. And so then I realized, education would be a pretty good gig, I think. And so
that's the way Mike goes.
So that's how I kind of landed on that.
So you get into college, and then did you go into teaching then? Oh, there goes our timer.
I did, yeah. So I taught. I taught in Beersford for 7 years. I was a first grade. So my first job was a first grade teacher. By the way, that's the hardest job ever. Like I mentioned, working in the Forest Service, that was a hard job. Teaching first graders is the hardest job in the world. It is. I was never so exhausted as that job. So elementary teachers in general, but first grade teachers especially have a place in my heart for what they do.
So you have to have a good story of something a kid did that you'll never forget, right?
Ooh, right? A good story. Well, what not first grade teachers, but yeah, like when I taught 5th and 6th grade. Eventually, I got smart enough they let me teach a little further up the grade level. I mean, I could tell a lot of stories. I mean, I have kids that threw up a lot in the class. I mean, I've picked up my share of, projectile type things in the past. And, but I mean, mostly just really positive. I don't know if I have any like really crazy, funny stories, but it's challenging work. Like I really admire teachers. And it's a lot harder now than it was back then.
Did anybody hand you vomit?
I don't know if I had anything like that. So
that's my story. In the 6th grade, we were taking a test, and a classmate of mine, we heard it sounded like a cough. Yeah. And he got up, and of course we all had to watch to see what he was doing. I mean, one of the things you learn in school is if you listen to somebody ask a question about the test, sometimes the teacher gives more information than they should. Yeah. So we were always clear about, what are they going to do there? So anyway, this classmate gets up, and he just has his hands like this. We're not really sure what's going on. And he just walks up to Mr. Hoskins and says, he has his hands out like this. He says, here. And without thinking, Mr. Hoskins just puts his hands out. And this guy had Ralph, and just, here you go. Oh. And then he went to the bathroom to wash his hands. Probably both of them did. But Mr. Hoskins, the look on his face was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Oh, that's wild.
And then they get out that sawdust peppermint stuff. It smells so good.
Yeah,
at least we thought
almost
it did.
Worse than the. Yeah, you're taking me back to some good times there.
Oh yeah, obviously. So teaching lasted for how long for you then?
Yeah, so I taught and coached for 7 years, first grade, and I got a master's degree during that time, and taught 1st, 5th, and 6th, and had a wonderful group of teachers, a team to work with, great support from the administration as well. It was a really good experience. And then I had an opportunity to go back to do some grad school, and at the same time there was a an administration. They were just trying to kind of fill some gaps, and so they had an assistant administrative position for grades 7 through 12. So I was a principal then for 2 years, assistant principal, and then we brought 6th grade over from the elementary, and we then established a middle school, and so I was a middle school principal then. So I did administration for 4 years as well. So
I can't see you as a principal.
Yeah, it was.
You're too nice.
Oh, well, tell you what, it doesn't take long to
turn the trigger.
Things can change pretty quickly. So another great experience. I mean, that's kind of where the leadership part of it, I just really enjoyed it, and we did a lot of really fun and creative things there. Again, great team, and so that was good. And coaching was a huge part of my experience in Beersford as well. I was a track coach for most of that time. And small town, you do other things too, but that was kind of my baby.
Did you, as the principal, did you have to have a little bit of a distance from the kids, or give them an impression, don't mess with the principal?
I wouldn't, honestly, I don't know, not really. I almost, not that I was a softie, but I think what I did discover is that you realize really quickly, especially when you're a teacher, that kids act out in a certain way for a reason. They aren't, kids don't just naturally misbehave because they want to misbehave. There is something there. And so luckily I had, some people that kind of helped me when I was younger as a teacher understand that, because part of me just wants to be like, you're being dumb. That'd be the natural thing, really. But then you just sort of take a deep breath and realize there's layers of what's going on there. So as an administrator, really not much different. There's definitely some times where conversations were uncomfortable with kids and with parents. But that kind of comes with the territory. And ultimately you look at it through I'm here to serve, I'm here to help. Stinks now, but we'll get through it. And so now I wouldn't say I necessarily had the big tough guy kind of a thing going on. That really wasn't me.
You didn't walk around with a big wooden paddle, slapping it on your hand?
No. I've always been a believer that relationships are huge, and so it's how do you do that? And so if you're a jerk, it's kind of hard to get connected with somebody. So
speaking of relationship, good segue there, Mike.
Hey, about that.
So what is a relationship marketing coach?
Yeah. So kind of give the shorter version. So after I had this career as a teacher administrator, I got into a sales position, and for a while I was trying to figure out, what are some things I can do to stay connected with the customers and clients throughout our sales process that we would go through. And, whether I'm a teacher or administrator or a community member or a dad or whatever, I've just always believed that relationships it's everything.
Right.
But what does that really mean? What does it mean to have a relationship with your customers and your clients? And, a lot of it boils down to how you serve them. And so as a coach, one of the things that I try to help individuals or businesses recognize is that it's not about what you're getting from them. It's what can you give? A real relationship is about what you can give, whether that's value or it can take on a lot of different forms, but that it begins with a give, not a take.
Yeah.
And so helping a business leader recognize that it's not just about transactions. It's just not about the bottom line. And so there's different pathways you can take with it. So if you're a leader of an organization, what are you doing to strengthen the relationships with your colleagues, with the people that you serve? How do you genuinely engage in that? And then extend that to your customers, your customer base. What are you doing there? And so that's kind of where I landed on, what my passion project, as we were talking about earlier. And so, as a coach, I'm there to guide them, because I can't force it. If people don't see it, they don't see it. But it's a lot of asking questions as much as anything.
And I would assume it's got to be more of a long play to be active with relationship marketing, because I would say that a lot of businesses look at marketing as transactional. I'm gonna put out an ad wherever it may be, and I expect something to come back. because they want maybe that faster transaction to occur. Somebody can respond to that. But that relationship marketing, I assume, has to take a little bit of an extra effort and a little bit more time.
It does, 100%. You know, and I think what I experience is individuals that see their like they feel like their relationship is strong, but it's because you're providing a service that they need. And so how do you sometimes it's volume, right? Yeah. Like some businesses are just based on volume, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not trying to say that's bad, but long term, like for example, if you're say you're a real estate agent, mm-hmm. if you just nurture the relationship with all the connections that you already have, you don't need to go look for a whole lot more, because you're going to get the referrals, and people are going to, you know, when people are asking like, hey, who do you use, or who did you work with? Oh, I used, you know, Jane or whoever. Sure. Because you've strengthened that relationship, like you've earned the respect, you've earned the relationship. And so you are right, 100%. It is a slow play. And in this, you know, it's, we live in the microwave society. This is a crock pot solution. Yeah. And so it's a slower deal, but the depth and the quality of those can be pretty transformative. I mean, it's kind of like having the, you know, the raving fans kind of a scenario, but how do you get that? You know, what are you doing? You know, asking them like, what are you doing now? You know, and if they don't have any concept of what a raving fan is, well, then you kind of know, okay, well, we got a ways to go. Yeah. But that's where you start.
We'll be right back. So Mike and I have talked about this concept before about, I remember you shared the story about coffee mugs.
Oh, yeah.
Where the not giving a mug with a logo on it, but maybe something they're more interested in. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the short version of that. Okay. So like, we did it was a sales presentation, and essentially what we started off with, what I had historically done was like, we go in and we present to like 20, 30 teachers, and they all get the same mug with the company logo on it. And then one day I had this idea, like, wouldn't it be cool if everybody had their own mug that like was appropriate for them? So I went out to like everywhere you can imagine, and I found like 60 mugs, just like the most random mugs. Like I would go to like Menards and Hobby Lobby and like the most random places where you can get like mugs for like $1 or $2 or $3. And so we go to the presentation, and I spread these mugs all over the room, and I said, before we start, we're gonna ask you to go ahead, and we're going to like personalize this, and we're going to let you choose a mug that, you know, you think kind of fits you. And they took it like super seriously, and like they went around and they found like they were like really looking at all these mugs. And so that just opened up all these conversations. Like some guy grabbed a Star Wars mug, it was like a Chewbacca mug. And like, okay, well, that's the fine arts guy. We figured that out pretty quickly. And, you know, someone grabbed the mug with the dog on it, and somebody had a mug with like fishing on it. It's like it's like a reflection of who they were, and it opened up these conversations. Interestingly enough, a couple weeks ago, I went back to that same school, and one of the directors said, "Yeah, I still have the mug from that day." And they remember the experience. Like we had created a very unique experience for them. And had I gone in with the normal, you know, standard company mug, chances are they probably wouldn't even have taken them. Yeah. It's like arrogant, like, here's my mug, go advertise for me. But like when we made it about them, kind of, it was a little bit of an experiment at the time, but like we made it about them, and all of a sudden it was a totally different experience. And so realizing that relationship building is all about the other person, it's not about you. I already know my story. Right. I mean, I don't need to spew it out on you. So I'm more intrigued by hearing your story. You know, it's about being interested, not interesting. Yeah. And if a person can get that in their mind, if that's their mindset, it really shifts conversations a lot.
So I didn't tell you this, but it wasn't long after we spoke that when you told me about the mugs, and I think we talked about that book Giftology. I think we did. Yeah. Which, which talks about, it's a similar premise that Mike's talking about. I think the example that I may have shared with you is a gentleman who was trying to get Tony Robbins' attention, and so he had a knife set put together that on the handle were all of Tony Robbins' quotes, and it was like a $7,000 set.
Yeah.
So obviously you got to match your gift with your request, but it totally got Tony Robbins' attention, and then this guy earned his business. So what we did is my wife had just purchased a laser engraver through a Kickstarter campaign. So we bought, I don't know how many dozen sets of cork coasters.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did is we put the customer's logo on the top of those coasters.
Nice.
And on the back side, we etched in compliments of Forefront Studios.
Yep.
So we were secondary,
Yeah.
and everyone would see that.
Beautiful.
And we have given gifts out to clients in the past, but we always try to think of something that's practical, that's got the potential of people seeing it over and over again, but something that they can use. And just this past week, we went to 2 different clients, and those coasters were front and center on their conference room table.
Yep.
So that's a great feeling to know that they got usage out of it, or it was something just unique enough that nobody else had given them the coasters.
Yeah.
But it's out there and it's being used, and that's happened with other gifts that we've given them. They did have our logo, unfortunately, but it's just about putting some more thought into it. But just the act of giving to somebody who has probably already helped you, or even if they haven't helped you yet at all, you can give to that. And so shout out to Mike. I had a couple of challenges myself, and out of the blue, I get these cards from Mike. So he practices what he preaches. He doesn't just throw this out there. So yeah, I think it speaks volumes about trying to build relationships. Clients will find that out, and you definitely live that out.
Yeah. I appreciate
So I
that.
appreciate that a lot. So so for people who are listening to this and going, okay, so tell me more, like what are some ways, some approaches that you recommend that people should take to begin to develop that relationship with their clients or potential clients?
I think it really you have to be intentional, so you have to start with that. And what does that look like? We're in such a tech heavy world, digital world, right? So, and it's crazy noisy. We're all distracted by it. I certainly am. We all go down the scroll hole on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me personally, you mentioned cards. And so for me personally, whether it's me or I'm helping someone recognize, how to build a relationship, it is finding ways to celebrate other people, and so lift them up, encourage them sometimes. So, for me, I'm always trying to celebrate the ABCs, anniversary, birthdays, Christmas, or celebrations type of things, right? So that's a starting point. Yet at the same time, everybody does have a birthday. Not everybody has an anniversary, not everybody has, Christmas and stuff, but everybody has something that can be celebrated or encouraged, or a need for encouragement or lifted up. So I just encourage people to really listen in the conversations. One of the things that I've discovered as a relationship coach is I listen so much more intently, and I do it because I'm listening for that thing they tell me, like, I know this about you, so I'm not really listening, but you're a Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
So, but if I didn't know that about you, and you share a story about, great year for the Chiefs, et cetera, there's a really good possibility I may take that, put, Patrick Mahomes on the front of a card or something Chiefs related, and put a message, along with that card. And what that says to the person is, you actually heard me.
Right.
As opposed to something generic or, that just doesn't really have a personal feeling or touch to it. So again, back to just becoming really intentional with your listening, I think is huge. Now, you can do different things with it. I choose to do it through our card system that we use.
Yeah.
You know, you might do it in other ways. I think why the card program works is like we're talking about actual cards in the mail. Some people think like, and I started talking about them, they're like, so is this an email? Like is this like, how does this thing show up when I'm explaining it to them? And when they literally get something in the mail, that's a totally different experience than the text message, the email, the messenger message, those kind of things. So
real quick for people, you made that quick segue there.
Oh,
so Mike has, he's got this tool that he uses, and we're users of this, where you've got the ability, whether it's an email list or even if it's just individuals, and you can send cards to people, a group of them, or even separately. Or you can upload photos that you can download off of Facebook, or even those that you take, and you can send out highly customized cards to individuals, or I guess there's gifts that come with that as well. But anyway, that's what he's talking about, and it's pretty cool. I had a personal situation, and it reminded me of these lyrics from a song I like. And Mike went that extra step that he's talking about. He saw something I must have posted on Facebook, and so he designed the card in such a way where it were the lyrics, but the lyrics were put into the shape of a heart. And anyway, it's not on my desk, it's in my office, and it's something that I feel guilty if I threw it away because it's very heartfelt. And it's those kinds of things that I think you can do for a business or for an individual that will definitely cement you in their thoughts.
Yeah,
it's pretty powerful stuff. So I got to double check our time here. We are pretty close to our time here.
Sure.
But before we do that, is there anything else on the relationship marketing? We'll put links to getting a hold of Mike if you're a candidate or would like to talk with Mike more about how your business can participate with relationship marketing. But is there anything that you would recommend that somebody watching this that they could do right away to begin their quest for being a better relationship marketer?
Listen more. I know that sounds cliche and it sounds incredibly simple maybe, but work on being a better listener. You know, and that might be, there's so many things in life, right? I mean, that could be at home, it could be business, committees, church. I mean, like it just can go in so many different ways. But one of the things that I learned a couple of years ago, I did this. I went on Facebook Live and I read a daily devotional, and it took a while to kind of get some traction. And then eventually, I would have people that would like come up to me, like, you know, we're living small enough places, you just run into people, and they would say thanks, but then they would start telling me their stories. They would like tell me like sometimes they were tough, like they were going through stuff. Yeah. And it was just like this, whoa, like it really helped me realize like it ain't about Mike Limmer. There's people going through things, and that helped me realize how important it was to listen. You know, and then what action you take, you know, we call it promptings in our organization, you know, follow your promptings. Like if you have someone that, you know, is going through something, it doesn't have to be bad. Like it could be a celebration too. Like if you got a promotion, like, hey, celebrate that, like act on those things. Yeah. You know, our time here is just gone in the blink of an eye. So don't live with that regret, and take action on those things and celebrate those people or lift them up or encourage them. You know, be a good listener.
I was, this was many, many years ago. I was listening to a podcast, and it was a dating podcast. And it was talking about how to be more successful in your dating, whatever. And I mean, this is before, you know, cell phones took off, but they were still around. They were a distraction. Yeah. And so this one guy was saying, if you really want to be successful in your dating, stop looking around the restaurant or whatever you're doing and put all the focus on you know, the individual, and you're going to have a lot better luck. So I'm like, all right, I'll give this a shot. So it was, you know, first date, go to this restaurant, and, you know, usually it's back and forth about where you're from, what'd you do, blah, blah. I spun everything around purposefully, intentionally, around finding out as much as I could about this person. And then if she would ask anything about me, I would answer it very quickly, and I would spin it back on her. And we got to the end of the conversation, at the end of the date, and she said, I don't know what to say. I feel like I've learned so much about you, and you are such a great conversationalist, even though she had been the one to do all of the talking. And so it's amazing that she felt a true connection with me simply because I continued to make eye contact. I wasn't looking around, and I was just making it all about her. And I hope that doesn't sound shallow for me to do this experiment, but it proved exactly what that guy's talking about. When next time you're out having coffee with somebody or interacting like that, try to put the phone down, be engaged in what people are saying, and that leads to much deeper conversations. And then certainly it opens up the door for them to do that back to you as well, because we've all had those conversations where somebody's phone is literally right there and they've got the screen turned up. Probably not a good way to conduct a business meeting usually.
Yeah. And it's, it's common, sadly, for sure. But, I'm guessing that, that date, that person felt seen and heard. Yeah. And I think we go through so much of our lives distracted that I don't think people do feel seen. Or you said something earlier about, your card, and you'd never throw it away. And it's one of the things that I was taught early on was that when someone receives a photo card of themselves, their family, their pet, or just, some special moment, like you've captured a moment that takes them back to that moment. Yeah. Like they physically feel that moment. And nobody throws that away. Right. Like you might even go in a drawer, but it never gets thrown away. Like when you used to develop pictures, we still have stacks of pictures. They still didn't get thrown away. They may not go in a book, but they still didn't get thrown away. Yeah. So, and I think that says a lot about, the importance of the relationship and being seen and heard. Yeah, for sure. All right. So as we come to a close, what is a central core thought, action, belief, something that you learned in your formative years that you take with you even into the present or into the future that you want to share with our audience that maybe they can learn something from that? For years I used to have the quote on my desk, if you want to predict the future, you have to create it. I think some people call it Drucker, some people say it's Abraham Lincoln. I don't know.
Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. So I don't know who really said that. So, I mean, for many years, that was really kind of a thing that I held on to. For someone living in sort of a fear, like what's the future, like, help create it. As I've gotten older, my faith has deepened, rather significantly, and I really I'm a simple guy. I don't try to complicate things. And, you see this kind of on a bumper sticker, he is greater than I, people probably visually kind of know what I'm talking about. And I've just tried to keep that as, part of, and living that out, and here, when we're filming this, it's, Holy Weeks is, top of mind for me. And so, that just keeping in mind that it's not about me and, he is greater than I is something I have tried to hold true to. Yeah. Nice. Nice. Well, we will, like I said before, we'll put all of Mike's contact information into the show notes so you can get in touch with him. Anything else before we bring her out to the close? Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've been waiting for months to do this with you. Yeah, we rescheduled this, and I greatly appreciate it. So. Finally got him there. Yeah. All right, appreciate your time. Yeah. All right, well, that's all for this episode of Nostalgia Street. We hope that this has been something worth listening to. Vince always has this eloquent way of ending. Unfortunately, he's not here. Again, we hope that his amputated limb will grow back quickly. I'm going to go to hell for this stuff, I'm sure. Anyway, we'll see you next time on Nostalgia Street.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you're on iTunes, please take a moment and leave us a rating and review.
Head on over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. You'll get access to engaging visuals that complement our podcast content.
Thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to having you with us on our next episode. So until next time, listeners, stay curious, stay engaged,
And never stop walking down Nostalgia Street.